Boom. Guys, it's exactly 18:15 in the PM on a Thursday evening. I'm over here at Simoson Building on Simon Mwewa Lane, plot number 8585 on the corner of Lucia and Simon. And I chose to come to you at this time simply because I think, you know, anything between 1815 and 1830 is a really good spot. It's 45 minutes before the news, which gives me plenty of time to sort of get my thoughts across to you. And side note, I must confess to you, earlier today when I came to you at about, I think it was 11:15 this morning, I did have a couple of extra points that I wanted to make during my broadcast, and I was pleasantly surprised to receive as a guest Honorable Kangbe from Kamfinsa, MP for Kamfinsa. I didn't know he was even in Lusaka, and he had sent me a message earlier, and I responded and I said, "Hey, listen, how about we have lunch over at Mama Mwewa's kitchen? Because, you know, I go to my restaurants, my mother's restaurant, maybe a couple of times a month or something. And I thought I'd offer him some lunch. And he said, well, you know, I'm sort of zooming in and out, but, you know, swinging by the office would be great. And, you know, I said, look, if you're able to do that, that's great. And he did, and I was pleasantly surprised. I had a really, a conversation that I thoroughly enjoyed. We sat and we talked all things politics. I will say this, though, about him. He certainly has a very good future in politics. That is very clear. You know, there's certain people you sit with and you can instantly tell that, you know, sitting across from me, I felt his heart. I felt his patriotism, which I didn't feel before. And that's only because I think sometimes when you don't know people, you judge them because you don't know them. You know, the extent of who they are is only visible through this medium. And I count it a privilege that I had a chance to sit down with him. And I can honestly say that he is a patriot. He loves this country. He wants to serve this country, and he has a long history of serving this country. He's got a long track record of serving this country. And what's in his bag of advantage is that he's young. So he's got a long, illustrious, prayerfully, hopefully, a sustainable life in Zambian politics. When you name the name of Christopher Kangbe in Zambian politics, you know that you're talking about a formidable candidate, a candidate that loves his country. And I wish him the best. I did say to him off camera, though, that I felt that in as far as the PF party is concerned, this is my view. This is not something that he told me or anything. I'm just telling you my view. I think that it's going to be a long road ahead, especially after EcL is put to rest. I know there's some people that may think that EcL will never be put to rest. That's not true. He will be put to rest, and we will hear the outcome of that decision tomorrow, before midday tomorrow. And I was telling Christopher, and I can call him Christopher because he's younger than me. He's actually 40 years old. Google said he was 41. so I can call him Christopher. I did say to him off camera, I said, Chris, you got a long road ahead of you, and but you are up for I think that you can give them a good run for their money, and if not now, definitely later. You know, and of course that's up to the Zambian people. None of these things are cast in stone. Okay, and that's the beauty of living in a democracy. I did say to him, though, that, you know, once EcL is put to rest, the PF machinery is going to go into overdrive into making sure they get rid of promising people like him. I believe that, only because the old guard of the PF is so rigid, and we'll see what happens. But in the interim, and I said it in my last broadcast, and I'll say it again today, when the dust settles and when the dew dries within that party, that PF, I think that amongst the leaders that they're floating, the one most likely to get it within that segment of the PF, in my view, is Brian Mundubila. He seems to me like he might get that, and of course we won't know until the PF circles the wagons on this issue and finally let the people know who they will rally behind. But it's not going to be a walk in the park. The process of selecting a leader within PF after ECL is buried will make the movie 300 look like a picnic on a Sunday afternoon, because those guys are going to kill each other. And whoever they select, whoever they choose, there's going to be a mass exodus from that party of disgruntled members who would have felt disenfranchised, disillusioned, and sidestepped. That's just the name of the game. That's how it's done. And only the strong will survive that process. And because, the truth is we need a formidable divergent view. We need a formidable opposition. We need an opposition that provides checks and balances. Any democracy that dares to function without that is no democracy at all. And so it is up to these jokers to put their house in order so that they can be a formidable opposition voice. And in my view, the one that is most likely to provide a coherent, substantive, level-headed opposition voice within that thing called the PF is Brian Mundubila, in my view. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. I don't know what your views are, and share those views with me if you can. Guys, before I continue, somebody pointed out to me, said, you lick your lips a lot. I know. Stacy B said to me once, she says, you need to have water, a cup of water next to you so that you look parched. You know what it means when somebody says you look parched? It means you look thirsty. J'ai vraiment soif. That's French for I'm very thirsty. J'ai vraiment soif. Soif in French is thirsty. Please do me a favor, share this live with people that you think would be interested in this conversation, and let's have a conversation about this very important topic. Let us begin. I'd like to first of all tackle the issue of what could possibly happen tomorrow. Now, let me be very clear. My delivery today, my dissertation to you today, should not in any way be misconstrued as some type of prophecy or some type of prediction, because, in Zambia, unfortunately, our Zambian people are taken so easily when someone says, no, I see it in the realm of the spirit. Yeah? God has spoken to me. God doesn't even talk to those jokers. Okay, let's be clear. All these Facebook so-called prophets, every last one of them are scoundrels. Every last one of them are skullduggers. They're con artists. God doesn't talk to a single one of them. And here it is, they jump on Facebook talking about, I see it in the realm of the spirit. You haven't seen diddly squat. Okay, let's be clear about that. So I want you to know that my opinion is just that, my opinion. Okay, it's, hey, Anita Zoe, I see you. Thank you. My opinion is just that. It is an opinion. It is not a prophecy. I've never come to you claiming to have a prophecy about anything, because that's not how I roll. Okay, it's not a prediction. It is an opinion based upon, wait for it, my observation. Can you absorb that? Are you mature enough to take that in? Huh? Are your feet firmly planted on the ground for you to understand that it's possible for a social media commentator like myself to give an opinion based upon an observation? Yeah? Are we good? I think we're good. Yeah. So, and here it is. It is not in the interest of this nation, Zambia, to have a former head of state that served, regardless of whether or not he got along with the current administration. That is neither here nor there. That is an inconsequential discussion. When you start talking, that's not the topic. You are scapegoating when you start talking like that. The issue is EcL served this country for 7 years. He held the reins of power for 7 years. He served the Zambian people for 7 years. And because of that, he falls under the category of former head of state. Every former head of state should receive a befitting send-off. Period. So, given that fact, it is imperative that we do the right thing as a nation. And besides, and we keep saying it, and this is something that the PF conveniently ignores. This is something the PF conveniently never discusses. Okay? Any podcast you see with Emmanuel Mwamba, Given Lubinda, Raphael Haijaka Nakachinda, anytime you see those jokers anywhere, they will never ever discuss, they will never refer to, they will never make it known that it's a side note. They will never talk about the fact that the PF themselves set a precedent in as far as how former and late presidents are to be buried. With the case of Kenneth Kaunda, KK's family didn't want a state funeral in the way that the PF prescribed. KK, his wish was to be buried next to Abeti. The PF, when they were in government, made it abundantly clear. Given Lubinda famously said, if the family wants to stay away, let them stay away. They can stay away if they want. If we as PF, we're going to do the right thing because this is the way it's supposed to be done. Given Lubinda said that. But you will never hear Given Lubinda referring to that. Never hear Emmanuel Mwamba referring to that. You will never hear Raphael Haijaka Nakachinda. You'll never hear him refer to that. They have convenient amnesia, those jokers. All right. So because of that, it stands to reason that the Word of God says in the book of Job, it said, not the book of Job, I was going to say the quote that says, that the thing which I feared the most has happened unto me. Job said that. The PF are looking at this situation and they are saying to themselves, the thing which we feared the most has happened unto us, because the very thing they propagated when they were in government, the very thing they pushed when they were in government is now staring at them right square between the eyes. And they don't have the grit to own up to it. They don't have the grit, the integrity, the wherewithal, the dexterity to embrace it. So let's be clear about that. Regardless of whatever arguments they put forward in South Africa, and I find it so sad, I find it disingenuous that the Lungu family took it so far that Attorney General Zambia had to get involved to ensure that our tradition of burying former heads of states is not broken. It is a tradition that has to be held regardless of who's in power, regardless of who's serving as president. That should always stand. The hammer will break but the anvil will remain. Understand that. Let that sink in your spirit. Let it bubble in your oblongata. Let it marinate in your soul. The hammer will break, but the anvil will remain. All right. So, and let me add something to that. You know, when I look at the family, I know beyond a reasonable doubt the reason the Lungu family, the nucleus family, is it nucleus? Yes, the nucleus family. Walungu's daughter, children, wife, that conclave there. Forget Makebi Zulu. Makebi Zulu is only doing it for the money. That's for him, it's all about cha-ching. You know, sometimes Makebi comes across like someone that cares about the Lungus and his heart. No, it's all about money. Every single minute that goes by, Makebi Zulu is dreaming about billable hours. You think Makebi Zulu is providing that service, and rightly so, because he's a lawyer. But let's not get it twisted. You know, Makebi Zulu does what he does because he's getting paid. By the time he leaves South Africa, Makebi Zulu will be able to go to the Maldives for lunch, go to England for breakfast, and then fly to Morocco for tea. That's basically what's going to happen there. Okay, and the Lungus have the money. You know, when Edgar Lungu died, we all know that he left uber amounts of money, tons of cash, lots of wealth that the kids are just dipping into. So Makebi Zulu he knows that he's in for a perfect ride when the dust settles and when the dew dries. I know all of this sounds insensitive, but we have to be real. We have to be accurate when we're describing this issue. When I look at the family, the nucleus family, I doubt very seriously that they would be comfortable, rather, with depositing EcL in South Africa, and then after that procession, after that process, them getting on the plane and then coming back to Zambia, knowing full well that they have left EcL's body deposited in the cold, hard soil of Mzansi, Amazulu, the land of Shaka. Mwayabula ba kuchipata, mwayabatwala ku Mzansi, and you get on a plane, come to Zambia, you land at the airport, and your friends and family say, "Where's EcL?" "Oh, we left him behind." "Where?" "Oh, he's in Mzansi." "Mzansi where?" "South Africa." Why would you do that? "Oh, the government and I, we couldn't see eye to eye on a couple of things, and so we left him there." "So what are you doing back here?" "Oh, I don't know. We're just going to wing it." But he's there. So what happens when you feel a certain aura of sentimentality and you want to visit the grave? What are you going to do then? "Oh, we're just going to hop on a plane and go to South Africa." "Oh, really?" Yeah. We're going to, if anytime I feel, if I have a memorable moment and I want to remember my father, all I do is just get on a plane and go to South Africa. Why would you do that? "Oh, I just didn't want HH to be part of this process." Which brings me to this. Something that people are not talking about. You see, when you say state funeral, when you say a former head of state is accorded a state funeral, and that 21 gun salute that is traditionally meted out cannot occur without a sitting head of state there. Why? Because he is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. What sense does it make for a 21 gun salute when you've got a living head of state who's alive, a living head of state, and you fire a 21 gun salute in the absence of the commander-in-chief. It doesn't make sense. That one is completely out. So when you hear people say, no, we don't want Lungu there. I mean, we don't want the HH there. How are you going to do the 21 gun salute without the commander-in-chief? No, we just don't want him there. That's a form of insurrection. You want the commander-in-chief of the armed forces to be at home watching it on TV whilst the 21 gun salute is going off. HH is not present. That's nonsense. That is buffoonery. That is idiocy. And we are not going to stand for that. This is a country of laws, not of men. Understand that? The moment you grasp that, just that concept of the 21 gun salute, it cannot properly happen in the absence of a living, sitting head of state. It can't happen. That one you can forget. So the family are being unreasonable. They are. So in my view, now that we have taken it to the legal doorstep of South Africa, and we've basically gift wrapped this issue. We've practically gift wrapped this issue and given it to the courts of South Africa to determine the fate of the burial of our sixth former president of this republic. But the South Africans, I guarantee you, when I say guarantee, I'm from an observational point of view. Let's be clear. I don't have any inside information. I don't know. It's purely from observation. I suspect, very confidently so, that when the dust settles and when the dew dries, the South African court will rule kuti chine uyu muntu uyu served as president of that republic. There is no logical reason for him to be buried in South African soil. None. We see no reason why EcL, having served as president of that republic called Zambia, we see no reason why he should not be buried there. Therefore, we wash our hands of this issue and we commend the body of EcL back to the people of Zambia. That is what I think is going to happen. Why? Because it is the logical thing to take place. That to me is logical. It is illogical for the courts to say, no, actually, you family, I think if you want to South Africa, I think you are correct. That body belongs in South Africa. It belongs in Mzanzi, Kuno, with the Amazulu, in the land of Shaka. Do you see how ridiculous that sounds? Do you see that? Why are we fighting for a citizen of this country to be buried in foreign soil? Not only a citizen, but a citizen that served as president. Why are we fighting for that? It's nonsensical. It is an attempt by the Lungu family to remove themselves and to give themselves an excuse never to come back to Zambia again. After all, our father is buried in South Africa. What impetus? Is that the correct word? Impetus? Is that the right word? Impetus? Impetus. The impetus? Yes. What impetus? Yes. What impetus is there for us to come back to Zambia when we have laid our father to rest in South African soil? There's no reason for Tarsila Lungu to come back to Zambia. There's no reason for Esther Lungu to come back to Zambia. There's no reason for Daliso to come back to Zambia if they deposit that body in South Africa. So, in my view, the summation is, it is a ploy, it is an attempt by the nucleus Lungu family to ensure and insist that Lungu's buried in South Africa so that they don't have to come back here to Zambia and face the inevitable. Simple. That is what I believe. And if you disagree with that, understand that, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, colleagues and comrades, that is the correct analysis of this situation as it stands. And if you don't look at it in that way, you'll be misled by the likes of Emmanuel Mwamba, who now has become a fully fledged tribalist. And I must tell you, I'm very disappointed in Emmanuel Mwamba. By the likes of Raphael Haijaka Nakachinda, by the likes of Given Lubinda, who is now claiming Kuti EcL entrusted me with the reins of the party. Oh, 50 years. Wake up, wake. Baskelem. That's what's going to happen. Lastly, what did I say? Oh, how did EcL become president? Guys, Lungu was not an intentional president initially. This is why history, it's important for you and I to not only record history, not only record it accurately, but refer to it often. Because the proof is in the history. You know the way the English say the proof is in the pudding? Well, honey, the proof is in the history. Lungu was the most unintentional president. No, not the most. One of the most unintentional presidents that has ever served this country. Lungu. Why? He never once, not once did he ever look in the mirror and say, I aspire for the presidency. Never. He never once walked through the hallowed halls of Parliament and said, you know, I'd love to be president, and this is my plan to become president. No. The presidency fell on his lap by chance and circumstance. You remember, let me run through the history. Our president, Michael Sata, passed away. And the PF were trying to do everything within their power to conceal it, to cover it up. But he did. He died. When he died, the vacuum that existed, I remember that like it was yesterday. You could literally cut the tension in the air with a knife. Because there was a leadership vacuum. Nobody knew who would take over. There were many names that were being floated. Many different names. People coming forward and hinting and implying that they were going to fill the shoes. But the Zambian people didn't know. The only thing that brought EcL into the limelight was when Guy Scott, who is a white Zambian, Guy Scott fired EcL, who was serving as Secretary General of the PF. All of a sudden, people within the PF, there was a faction within the PF that rose and said, who is this white man firing the Secretary General whom the late Sata had left the instruments of power with? That was the narrative that was spun to the general public. Who is this white man that is firing this black Zambian? Who Sata left the instruments of power to? That was the beginning. And I remember there was a car that had been burnt in one of the gas stations as a protest against the firing of Edgar Lungu by Guy Scott. That was when the tide began to turn for Edgar Lungu. Prior to that, before that, nobody knew what was going to happen in as far as the presidential leadership of this country was concerned. But there was a ram in the bush. Oh, there was a ram in the bush. Right when the Zambians thought we've come to our wits' end, we don't know what to do, who we're going to put on there, and then add to that the element of this chieftain component of our culture. Bashile Lungu. That alone pushed Edgar over the hill into victory. Let me submit to you, my brothers and sisters, that is a lacuna. You know what a lacuna is? It's a gap. That's a gap that should be filled. We should not be in a position where we are at our wits' end and we don't know what to do because of a crisis. That is a lacuna. That is a gap that we must always fill. We must never be in a position where as a people we don't know what the hell's going to happen. Because if we have these lacunas, one day a despot, a dictator will emerge from the ashes because of these lacunas. So far, we've been lucky as a country. We've been fortunate as a country. So far. We've been very, very fortunate and blessed. But we must always remember that we should never take peace and good governance for granted. Never. Because one day, we could very easily usher in a Pol Pot, an Adolf Hitler, an Idi Amin, a Genghis Khan. And that's how Lungu became president. Reluctantly, he became president. Now, because he became president reluctantly, this is the reason there's this highlighted characteristical flaw that Lungu carried with him for a long time. When he said he didn't have a vision. There's a reason he said that. Because Lungu was thrust into greatness at a time when he wasn't aware that greatness was going to be thrust upon him. That's the reason he said that. And he spoke, the word of God says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. He spoke his truth. He didn't have a vision. Why? Because greatness was thrust upon him. And now here it is. He's passed away. The party that he represents, or that he represented, are doing everything within their power to try and convince the Zambian people, using his corpse to advance a political agenda. That, my brothers and sisters, is not only sinister, it is witchcraft. It is witchcraft. It smacks of the occult. And it's a demonic approach to democracy. How dare you, PF, use a corpse to advance your political goal? How dare you? You ought to be ashamed of yourselves, every single last one of you. All right. Thanks for watching. What do you think of this plant? Tell me. Is that overkill? Is that too much? Tell me. I don't think so. All right. I gotta go. We'll wait for tomorrow, and we'll see how the score comes out. Good night. またチレします。